chairman of the Lee County Board of Commissioners calls the commissioners into session on this, the 19th of May, 2008, to conduct all business which would be properly brought before the body. Our first order of business will be our invocation of Mr. Hoyle, and then I ask you to remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We bow our heads. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day, for the health and strength to allows us to be in attendance. We ask that You would bless the members of this board and guide them in their deliberations so that everything that is done on this occasion will be pleasing and acceptable to You. And our Father, guide all the leaders in our country, state, and nation. Please give them the strength and will to do those things that are pleasing and acceptable in Your sight, so that our nation will be a model for others to copy. These things we ask in Your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have any additional items for the agenda? I have one. We need to appoint a voting delegate to the National Convention of NACO, which will take place in Kansas City, and I'm going to make that item D under new business. Are there any other additions?
We're gonna, Mr. Chair, we're probably gonna have some comments regarding the budget at this meeting. I'd like to add it somewhere.
All right, you want to add that as an item, or you want to do it in your comments?
No, it needs to be an item.
Okay, we'll make that item E. Under new business. Any other additions? All right, do we have any questions concerning the consent agenda?
I would like to pull item H. I have one question about one of the budget amendment items.
We make that item F under new business. All right, do I hear approval of both agendas as they are printed?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. And that is, of course, with the changes. Vote is unanimous. I now ask for the approval of the consent agenda with the exception of the pulled item.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. It is so ordered. We do not have anyone who signed up for public comments. We now go to old business, and I recognize Dwayne Brinson. Oh, wait just a minute. We got a couple of proclamations we need to read. First of all, recognize the proclamation for the Mental Health Month. Ask our representative to read that.
I wanted to say it was Mental Health Month. I got mental health, he's the old person.
Okay, we'll go ahead.
Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall physical health and emotional well-being, and whereas mental health illness will strike 1 in 4 adults in a given year regardless of age, gender, race, society, religion, or economic status, and whereas many people who have mental illness can recover and lead full productive lives, but the stigma surrounding mental illness can prevent people from seeking the medical attention they need, and whereas all Americans, including combat veterans and hurricane victims, are vulnerable to chronic mental health problems associated with trauma that can benefit greatly from early identification and treatment, and whereas an estimated 2/3 of adults and young people who have mental health disorders are not receiving the help they need, nearly 30,000 Americans lives are lost each year to suicide and mental illness, and whereas the cost of untreated and mistreated mental illness and addictive disorders to American businesses, governments, and families has grown to over $100 billion annually, and whereas community-based services that respond to the needs of the individuals and families are cost-effective and beneficial to consumers and the community, and whereas Mental Health Month is observed every May nationwide by advocacy organizations to raise awareness and understanding of issues related to mental health and to eliminate the stigma associated with seeking mental health services. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Lee County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 2008 as Mental Health Month in Lee County and call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in Lee County to recommit to increasing awareness and understanding of mental illness and the need for accessible service for all people who suffer from mental disorders, adopted this 19th day of 2008, May 2008.
Thank you. Mr. Haskell, now we'll get to older Americans.
Okay, proclamation, Older Americans Month 2008. Whereas Lee County is home to more than 9,000 citizens 60 years of age or older, and whereas this year marks the 43rd anniversary of the passage of Older Americans Act by the United States Congress, and whereas America's aging population reached another turning point in 2008 as our nation's first baby boomer received her Social Security retirement check on January 1st, representing the leading edge of an aging demographic wave, and whereas it is projected that 75 of North Carolina's 100 counties will have more people aged 60 and older than 17 and younger by the year 2030. And whereas this year's national theme for Older Americans Month, Working Together for Strong, Healthy, and Supportive Communities, reflects North Carolina's commitment to help all communities become more livable and senior-friendly to promote healthy aging and active engagement among people of all ages, and to ensure easy access to reliable information to aid consumers in making choices about care and in preparing for their future. And whereas senior citizens across the state celebrate Older Americans Month through ceremonies, events, fairs, and other activities, now therefore the Lee County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 2008 as Older Americans Month, and urges all citizens to honor older adults and those who care for them during May and throughout the year. We urge everyone to promote and participate in activities that contribute to helping older Americans make choices for a healthy and rewarding future. Adopted this 19th day of May 2008, Robert H. Brown, Chairman.
Thank you. I think it's very appropriate that we approve both of those proclamations. Now, moving on to old business, Mr. Brinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. As a continuation of my presentation from last meeting, I've compiled some research to identify the questions that the board proposed to me. We begin with that. The legislation impact. Last meeting, the board asked me what kind of impact these proposed changes would have to the economy in Lee County. The current revenue laws of the state enacted exemptions, whether it be homestead, land use, nonprofit companies, all the above, looking at about $2.5 million in actual revenue loss. at 97% collection. That's equivalent to about 5.6 cents on the tax rate. Some of my numbers are off the screen there. What I did, this is the numbers for the homestead exemption. What I did here is I used two methods to extrapolate what I believe will be the revenue loss for the homestead exemption income increase to $50,000. What I did is I took the difference in income from last year to this year, which was $4,500. They went from $20,500 to $25,000 from last year to this year. The result of that effect, we exempted about $3.5 million more. So I took that proportion and said if $4,500 equals this amount in tax-based exemption, then an increase of $25,000, going from $25,000 to $50,000, which is what may be proposed, then you're looking at an exemption increase of about $20 million. Now that's assuming, the $4,500 increase will be in direct proportion to the $25,000 increase. In my personal opinion, my subjective estimate to the side of it, which you can't really see, I'm going with probably $40 million or above as my estimate. My reasoning for that is that, if you allow me to flip to this next slide, if you look at the median incomes for the population group that's targeted in the homestead exemption, householders 65 and above, this is a 99 study, after you adjust for inflation, 65 to 74 is still below the median income of $40,000. 75 and over is below probably $30,000 when you adjust for inflation. Well, the new law is proposing that the homestead exemption income be increased to $50,000. If you look at those numbers, both stratums of that population are below the median income. So my reason for doubling the linear projection is that even though the income went to $25,000 this year, you're still well below that median income. So I think if we're increased to $50,000, you're going to see a lot more than this percentage increase over last year. Now, if you look at total, the current tax-based loss is about $30 million, okay, which is $225,000 a year in revenue. If you take the linear model, which is a $20 million estimate based on history, combine that with the current, you get about $50 million in tax-based loss, or $375,000 in actual revenue. Now, if you take my personal estimate, which is double or more than that, you're looking at a total tax-based loss of $70 million, or about $525,000 annually. Another item that we discussed in the last meeting, exempting builders' inventory until those properties are sold. With the help of Don, we were able to identify the properties that are owned by builders and the tax values on those properties. My estimate is about $21 million for those properties, or about $157,000 a year in annual revenue loss. Circuit breaker. The board last meeting asked about disqualifying events for the circuit breaker. I've compiled a list of those. Basically, you have 3 disqualifying events. You've got death, transfer of property, and if it's no longer used as a permanent residence. However, the disqualifying event, transfer of property, is not a disqualifying event if the owner transfers the property to a co-owner or spouse, and the individual continues or elects to use the residence permanently, and the individual elects to continue deferring those taxes. Likewise, death is not a disqualifying event for those same 3 reasons there. Multiple owners, again, I emphasized this last week, if the property is owned by 2 or more individuals, then both of those individuals have to qualify and must elect to participate in the circuit breaker program. Before I move on to foreclosures, is there any further questions that I can answer for the board on the exemptions and exclusions?
Go back to your last slide for me. And refresh my memory on the circuit breaker and what it does, because it seems to suggest here that, no, you don't have to go that far back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Now, property owned two or more persons, all must qualify and all must like participate. And sometimes people engage in partnerships or arrangements that they don't fully understand. So that seems to be one of those areas that an individual wanted to take advantage of it, one didn't, and two did. The one in there can't get it done.
That's true.
What's the benefit of the circuit breaker for the country now?
Well, if you remember, the homestead exemption was an exemption of tax value.
Right.
The circuit breaker, it feeds off of the income requirement for the homestead exemption. Remember, it can go up to 150% of what's required for the homestead exemption. So if circuit breaker were in effect this year, the homestead exemption income for this year is $25,000.
Right.
So the circuit breaker would be $37,500 this year, if it were in effect.
Okay.
The circuit breaker is simply deferment of taxes, tax dollars. If you make below the homestead exemption income limit, then you pay a maximum of 4% of property taxes on your residence, regardless of how much your home's valued. If you make between the homestead exemption income limit and the circuit breaker exemption income limit, then you pay a maximum of 5%, regardless of how much your home's valued at. But it's simply a deferment of taxes. Interest still accrues, and you can go back current plus 3 years in the circuit breaker.
Thank you.
Dwayne, do our home builders currently pay the taxes on the value of the new home they have just built and it's finished, or
Yes, ma'am.
they currently do?
Yes, ma'am. If they own it as of January 1, then yes, they do. We tax it at the market value. Now, if it's 50% complete, then we tax them at only 50% of the market value. But if they own it January 1, then yeah, we tax them at the market value. Foreclosure information. Last meeting, the board asked me to compile some research about the effect of a foreclosure program and the benefits to Lee County. This is the authority that gives the tax collector remedies for collecting taxes. Basically, the tax collector can garnish wages, attach bank accounts, intercept income tax returns, levy on property, and foreclose upon property. The impact on foreclosures. Right now, I believe the board has, I think you have a report there of the real property taxes. And there are approximately $1.7 million in delinquent real estate taxes as of May 5th. Additionally, there are about $711,000 in delinquent personal property taxes. Now, the reason I point out personal property taxes is that once personal property taxes become delinquent, they become a lien on real estate. So if you foreclose on real property, then you can also collect personal property taxes. This totals approximately $2.41 million in delinquent taxes, excluding registered motor vehicles. And this includes tax years 1998 through 2007. Now, as of September 1 of this year, this upcoming year, we'll no longer be able to enforce the 1998 taxes. We'll no longer be able to enforce collections on those taxes. That's beyond the statute of limitations. Now, the assumption with including the personal property taxes in there is that each real estate owner owns that personal property. Now, that's not going to be the instance in all cases. You're going to have some personal property tax that's delinquent and doesn't become a lien on real property because they don't own any real estate. The $2.41 million is equivalent to a little over 5 cents on the tax rate at 97% collection. The RFQ, I had Mr. Hoyle look over the RFQ for me, and he approved.
Back up for a minute.
Okay.
What are we doing to go after that 2.4 million?
Well, I'm requesting that the board approve going to a mortgage style foreclosure.
Mhm.
Currently, in the past, we have done an in-rim foreclosure, which is in-house. And I would like for the board to approve us going to a mortgage style foreclosure, which in essence outsources it to a qualified attorney.
What is the, out of the 2.41 million, or say a 2 million, what is their fee on that?
I think that can be negotiated with the attorney when you interview them. That can be negotiated. And that would be in addition to the taxes owed. So if you collect it, then the taxpayer would, if they owed $1,000 in taxes, they'd pay $1,600 or $1,700 because they pay for the attorney.
So we
also.
get the full 2.4.
Yes, sir.
You were saying that on the other one, you couldn't go back past 98, is that right, or 10 year?
Yes, sir.
So if we did the mortgage style, would that cover that so far as going back to 98?
Up till September 1st of 2008, we can enforce collection on the 98 taxes. Once September, because the statute of limitation can go back 10 years from the due date of the
Right.
taxes. The 98 taxers will due September 1st of 1998. So September 1 of 2008 will be 10 years. Is that correct, Mr. Horn? Right. So as of September 1st, we can't enforce collect. They can come in and pay it. We can't attach bank accounts and
Right.
But once
Enforced.
you've already done that, it's done, and they can't, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't alleviate their debt.
that's right. That's right.
Do you have a breakdown by year from each year?
Yes,
on
ma'am.
The delinquent,
Yes, ma'am.
what is it for 1998?
It's a marginal amount.
Yeah.
98 taxes total a little over $1,000. There are 6 bills outstanding. That's $1,126. I'll look at the personal property too real quickly.
We're saying the person under the, person over $1,000 and have to pay the attorney fees as well?
Yes, sir. Now, we could set a threshold where if it were below, $1,500, $2,000, and we
Well-
could use some other method.
Okay, just help me understand who gets paid first. We get our money first, or the attorney gets his money first?
I think the attorney would definitely get his fee. We could clarify that in the interviews. but-
Yeah, I know. I
They're gonna
know.
take their cut and then give us the rest.
Oh, that's what I'm listening for, all right.
That'd be something to clarify in the interview.
You're exactly
We
right.
definitely would.
You're exactly right.
The 98 delinquent personal property taxes, which the board doesn't have, there are 129 bills outstanding, which total $25,462. 98 personal property taxes. So those in combination with the real estate couldn't enforce collection after September 1 of this year.
So am I reading this right, that the total due for 98 in real property is 1,126?
Yes, ma'am. You can see as the years go on that they eventually, they get paid.
Okay, and the 98 personal property,
25,462. 129 bills.
I would say probably the chances of collecting that personal property 10 years ago is not there, right? I mean, doesn't include autos?
No, ma'am, it doesn't. Would you like a figure on that as well?
Only the gas savers.
98 RMV delinquent. We have 1,267 bills and almost 54,000 in 98 taxes for registered motor vehicles.
What are they gonna change that?
That's supposed to change in 2010.
2010?
Yeah.
Where DMV will start.
Exactly.
That'll make y'all's collection go sky high.
They will. Motor vehicles are a problem throughout the state. So that will
What
help.
are they doing in 2010?
They're working on an integrated system right now where the DMV offices will handle collecting property taxes and handling registrations as well. So whenever someone comes in to register their vehicle, they'll pay the property taxes at that time. Right now, once a tax becomes 4 months delinquent, we send that taxpayer's information, license number to the DMV so that tax can get blocked and they can't renew it until that tax is paid. Now, that definitely affects the current year tax rate, because it'll more than likely be collected next year rather than this year. But that's what they are trying to go to in 2010.
What will we lose to the state on that deal?
I think it's still in the workings. They haven't gotten all the hairs out of it. They're processing.
Actually, I'd like to see us assume that and the state pay us. My experience with the DMV and titling work or whatever is they don't do very much right to begin with, so
I've heard of a couple counties going to that, actually. I've heard of a couple
I
doing it.
hate to see them.
What they do in Georgia.
Don't hold back, let me just go ahead.
We don't give you license to that or credit goes in, like we do.
Any further questions?
Dwayne, could you provide for us, with this data that you've given us, somehow or other add the personal property and the auto taxes to each of those 10 years? Not today, but
Yeah,
so
sure.
that we have a total.
Sure.
So that in your slide, the 2 million included just real estate, or did that include all of the personal property and the?
The 2.41 million includes the real property and personal property, excluding the vehicles.
Okay.
The reason I didn't include the vehicles is that they don't become a lien on real estate. Just looking at a foreclosure program, if we were to go mortgage style, then if we foreclose on real estate, then we could collect on the personal property as well, but we couldn't on RMBs. That's the reason I came.
Repossess automobiles.
We can.
So would I assume that this new style of going to this company that's going to help you do this, it would alleviate a lot of problems in your department as far as going after this stuff and free up
Yes,
a lot of
sir.
time for you?
Well, the problem with NREM is that I think throughout the state, a lot of tax offices are finding that it's hard to attract and retain qualified personnel to do NREM. Here in Lee County, we have one person that has done NREM foreclosures. She's done less than a dozen, and it's been at least 10 years since she's done one. So that's the problem we're running into. And also, you've got a tax office in the legal area. If you're not qualified, that could be a liability.
And they get the same pay, whether they make the collection or not.
Right.
Attorney has an incentive to go after the money.
Do you know how many counties surrounding do this mortgage style now?
I know Chatham County just went to mortgage style. They were doing NREM and they just went to mortgage style. Throughout the state, there are about 10 doing NREM. So there's definitely a trend going to that mortgage style.
What is going to be your recommendation?
Well, I'll proceed on now. Let's see, I have it in here somewhere.
There we go.
Hitting the highlights of the RFQ, proposed schedule, the announcement today, proposals due. It's all over the course of about a month and a half from inception to making the recommendation. And each board member should have a copy of the RFQ, I think. The selection committee composition. I would request that probably myself and Danette Fitzpatrick from the tax office be included in the selection committee. Mr. Crumpton, preferably 2 county commissioners, Mr. Hull, and also Ms. Mentor, if available. My request, proceed forward with the RFQ, announce it to the public, see if there's anyone locally or outside the jurisdiction that would be willing to do the mortgage style foreclosure and, convert to the mortgage style versus NREM. I think that'd be a much better method. Any questions I can answer on that?
Wait, backing up just a second. This summary of unpaid tax bills, I think you have it broken down. And I'm looking at, you've got Lemon Springs, Northview, Tramway Fire, you got all those listed. Then it says GO1 is Lee County. Well, how is that? Is that something that doesn't fall on one of these other? I'm not sure what all these other line items are.
It's broken down by fire district.
Fire district.
Broken down by fire district. GO1 is Lee County taxes. And then, of course, the other line items is broken down by City of Sanford and each of your fire districts.
So for example, I live in the Tramway Fire District, so,
That would be under the tramway.
so if there was somebody in my subdivision who had delinquent taxes, they would show up on the Tramway line item and not the Lee County item, right?
It would be both of them.
Be both of them?
Should be. Is that correct?
Yes, because you owe both taxes.
Right.
You owe fire
Fire
district
tax.
taxes and you owe county taxes. The same way for somebody in the city.
Okay.
They'll show up in the city and in the county.
So basically, if I were to add up all these other fire district totals, you would think they would add up to the Lee County line, but it doesn't. So I guess that's why I'm confused.
Each line item is assessed a tax. And also, Lee County assesses a tax.
You pay a tax to the county, one is the fire district. That's what it is.
Okay,
Right.
so pretty much just like it's broken out on your tax bill that you get, that's what.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, sorry. I was
That's
just
okay. Any further questions I can answer?
Yes, sir. When do you anticipate having your recommendation coming back to us? Or are you making it today?
I would like to get it approved today so we can go ahead and proceed with the RFQ, if at all possible.
So moved.
To go to the mortgage style?
Yes, sir.
All right, motion been made. Allow our tax administrator to go to mortgage style foreclosures. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. It's so ordered, unanimous vote. Thank you, Dwayne.
Would the board like to go ahead and make a recommendation as to which two commissioners would be on the selection?
No, sir.
I don't think.
You inform the board who your people are going to be, give you a list of them, and then we'll proceed to assign two commissioners.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Probably be asking for volunteers.
No, that's the one that-
Sir. All right, going on to new business. Mr. Crumpton, item A. Consider appointment of legislative committee or liaison.
I think we skipped the public hearing. We have a public
Okay.
hearing that we need to do on the CDBG 2008 Scattered House program. We have Karen Kennedy to talk a little bit, and then we'll open up the public hearing.
Good afternoon. Today we're holding a public hearing for the new 2008 scattered site project that we will receive from the Division of Community Assistance. You received some information in your packet with the schedule. Ms. Chrisman is here from the Wooten Company, who has been handling this process and also working with our 2005 project. She is going to give you the comments before you open the public hearing. And in addition, after we have the public hearing, if you have any questions for her about the 2005, please ask them at that point, because she has to go to Franklin County for another public hearing tonight. She needs to get on the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Mr. Brown and the other commissioners. Pleasure to finally put some names and faces together. We've been working with you on your Scattered Site 05 program, which is rapidly coming to a close. Today, the public hearing that is required, there are two required public hearings with all CDBG, Community Development Block Grant programs. Today is just to talk a little bit about what the program does, and then when we come back to you in June, we'll present to you a more detailed criteria for the program. The grant will be $400,000. It is a non-competitive grant given to counties in North Carolina on a rotating 3-year basis. So Lee County is eligible for this every 3 years. The monies can be spent only on owner-occupied dwelling units, and those owners must be at 50% or below of the median income for the county. And the handout that you have, I don't know what page number it is, but you have a handout in your agenda packet that has those maximum amounts based on the number of people in the dwelling unit. It's the one that has a chart across near the bottom of the page. Don't have that, okay. Well, if you have a question about it, I'll be glad to tell you. I'll just tell you, a household of one person, which frequently we do work with just one, typically an elderly person, has to make less than $18,950 per year to qualify for the program. So rehab is eligible. That's where we go in and actually rehabilitate the home up to current building standards. The other option under the program is relocation, and that's where the house is in such bad shape that it cannot be rehabilitated for a reasonable amount of money. We do have a couple of those that came in under the 05 program that we will consider and will be on the list of applicants to consider under the 08 program, assuming that you choose to do relocation, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The county is required to ask the communities, the municipalities within the county to participate, and that would be Sanford and Broadway, both of whom will participate in the program. By participating, that means anybody who lives within their city limits is also eligible for the program. The options for the program is rehabilitation, relocation. Now, relocation of a household means that you actually find a new house or a newer house that's in good shape, and you move the family from the older home to the newer home, and you tear down the older home. That is much more expensive than rehab. We try to keep rehab to around $40,000 to $50,000 per unit. A lot of times a relocation, especially in a community like Lee County, might cost $100,000 to $120,000 to find them a decent, safe, and sanitary house to move into. So if you choose to do relocation, and there is definitely a need for relocation in Lee County, that would reduce the number of units you could do under rehab. The other option under the program is you can elect to spend up to 10% of the money, that would be $40,000, on urgent repairs. Urgent repairs would mean that they have one repair that far outdistances all the other repairs. It may be a leaking roof where they can't stay in their home because the roof is leaking and it's causing more and more damage. You want to get in there and stabilize the house. It might be a situation where there's no heat in the house, so you want to put in a heating system so they can stay in their home. These are all options, and you don't have to make a decision about this today. It's just a matter of letting you and the public know what those options are. I did want to go back and tell you again that we do have 2 or 3 homes, people who were in the Scattered Site 05 who were beyond repair. They may have applied for that program as far back as 2003 or 2004. And of course, the home continues to go downhill because the home owner doesn't have enough funds to repair the home. So we would like for you to consider that, and that will be presented to the Lee County the committee. There is a committee, Lee County, Sanford, and Broadway, who will meet to talk about the applicants. Right now, I think we have about 40 applications have come in already. We're talking 6 to 8 homes maximum. And the application period is still open until May 30th. So those are, just want to give you that information before you open your public hearing, and I'd be glad to answer questions now or later, whichever you want.
One quick question,
Yes,
in reference to the weatherization. You spoke about the heat replacement or unit if needed. What about the AC, if they have an AC, whether it be a window unit or
That is eligible, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, a lot of people consider air conditioning essential in today's climate.
right.
They have to have it already, or
No,
you add it?
I think if it's a situation where there's a health problem and they need it, it would be considered, even if they don't currently have. We certainly consider and do a lot of accessibility improvements. It may be a ramp into the house, it may be refitting the bathroom to allow a handicapped or a slightly disabled person to stay in their home. So those are other possible urgent repairs.
That's good. Anyone else have any questions?
I'd like to say that I think this is a really very, very valuable program. I went and visited one of the homes on Chalmers Drive the other day, and it's like night and day what was done, and I know that the homeowner was very tickled to death about having a brand new home essentially.
Good.
And I appreciate what you do and what Ms. Kennedy does because it's very needed.
And I thank you for asking or making that comment, Mr. Kelly. The program is set up as a forgivable loan. It is not a grant. It is a forgivable loan as long as the family continues to live in the house. For the 8-year loan period, the loan is completely forgiven at about 12.5% per year. So at the end of that 8 years, they owe no money back to the, they do sign a deed of trust and a note when they first get their assistance. But most rare that we have somebody leave their home. It does happen occasionally, but typically they're completely forgiven.
But they work very much like a grant.
They do work like a grant because they are forgivable.
Yes, so that people don't get turned off.
Right, but a lot of people are concerned about having to sign a deed of trust and a promissory note, but usually
We'll work
once they
with them on
understand
that.
it, they're okay with
We'll work
it.
with them on that.
Exactly,
Loan turns them off sometimes.
that's right.
I guess my concern is if the income eligibility is so low, is this gonna make their property values high enough that this is something that's gonna appear on Dwayne's list down the road? Because if, you know, it sounds like some of these things could really bump up the property
Tax value.
values, which is gonna increase their taxes, and so, you know.
And that does happen, that is exactly right. We, the contractor is required to pull building permits, and then that's part of the process, is I'm sure the tax value is evaluated.
Sometimes it's the, you know, it's sort of like paying for a picture of a beautiful hamburger with lettuce, tomato, cheese.
I'm on a diet.
Yeah. But, yeah, sometimes paying for the picture is not the same as paying for the actual, you don't mind paying for the actual sandwich. So they're coming out of a situation where they don't really, may not feel like paying on the house because of the condition that it's in. And once it's been repaired or even replaced, you take greater pride in it and pay now.
I'm just concerned about ability to pay the taxes if the real estate values go up, because, you know, if they didn't have the money to put into some part of the rehab to begin with, you know.
We do try to tell them things like that. For instance, that their value of their property will go up. If they don't have air conditioning and they get air conditioning, their electrical bill is going to go up. Sometimes it involves putting somebody on a public sewer or public water line. They've never gotten a bill before. So we do try to explain that to them as best we can so that they're not surprised at the end of the process.
I serve on one board serving 3 counties that does this, and I've been out to see the homes, you know, before and after.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I do know that the folks that we help with this program benefits extremely well with, you know, adapting to the different changes and things like this. Like you mentioned just a moment ago about the handicap accessibility. They appreciate it. And I think it's one of the best programs that I have been involved with. I've been on the board 8 years now. And it's to me, it's very beneficial when you have somebody that really can't afford, especially the elderly or a handicapped person, to have something like this done to make their life a lot easier.
And a lot of times, Mr. Lemon, this actually allows that person who might have been forced to move to a nursing home to stay in their home. If
Right.
they can't get in and out of their house or they can't use their restroom or bathroom, they may have to leave, and this allows them to stay. And that's a
Exactly.
benefit to them and to their families and to us, all of us as taxpayers, to keep them in their homes.
We have in the past, at our national NACO conventions, pushed for CDBG grants.
Right.
We do every year
Good.
and work hard for them. I believe the year before last, we thought we were gonna lose the whole program.
That's right, I remember that.
There's quite a few programs that are scheduled to be zeroed out, but we've managed to keep them going.
Mhm. Well, thank you for that, and I'm sure the members of your community who need this service are really grateful.
Well, we had some senators and some representatives that came and addressed the convention, and before they left, they were wearing the same badges we were in support of CDBG.
That's great.
One last question, and then I'm through. I know someone in a neighboring county that is with the so far as living in Harnett County that has a brain tumor and, unable to work, but their house needs some type of repair. And I understand that Harnett County has, I think that person has applied but haven't received any information, as far as where they could do the work or not. How could I check on that?
If I got their list, we're working with Harnett County. If you want to, you could give it to Mr. Crumpton and he can email it to me, or you want to write it down, and I'll check and make sure they're on the list. They have closed their application period, but in the past, we've always encouraged them to keep it open if somebody comes in like that and add them. The application, of course, is not due to the end of July, so we have an opportunity to consider them. I'd be glad to check on that, and if you've got a telephone number or some other way to contact you or them, if they're not on the list, we'll get them an application.
Well, and their taxes are going to be increased, but also they'll be eligible for the homestead exemption, so it won't be as much as it could be because of the income requirement. Thank you, Ms. Christmas.
And I'll let you hold your public hearing, and then if you
Okay.
still have questions, I'll be glad to answer.
All right, I'll now open the public hearing concerning the 2008 CBDG scattered site housing application. But I will now recognize anyone who would speak in support of the application. And I guess Ms. Kennedy and Ms. Crispin already.
I've never spoken in support of a grant application I'm writing, but I support this grant application because, as evidenced by the waiting list for Lee County, the needs are out there. And like I had mentioned to you at the last meeting, I sent over 200 applications out through the city and the county in the last 2 weeks, and they're slowly coming back in. So the needs are still out there. We were trying to clean up the waiting list. So I support this application.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Additional work for you.
I will make one comment in support too. I want to let you know, I forgot to mention this, that because we were able to finish Scattered Site 05 so quickly, we've done it very efficiently, which is a good way to do work. So there is enough money left in the admin line item of the current grant to pay for the preparation of the new grant, which is allowable under CDBG standards. So that gives you an additional $7,000 in the new grant to apply to the homes. So we're glad to be able to do that.
Thank you. We'll take every hit we can get.
I need it.
All right, anyone else to speak in favor? If there are none, then I will recognize anyone who would speak in opposition to this application. Hearing none, I will now close the public hearing and thank Ms. Kennedy and Ms. Chrisman for your input.
Thank you.
Ms. Christmas, once again, thank you for the report format that you use in providing us with an update. That really helps, it makes it very simple, and I hope other counties will adopt that same pattern.
Thank you. You didn't ask me any questions about 05, but because I do have to run up to Franklin County for their county commissioners meeting, I want to let you know that of the 6 houses, all but one are now closed, completely finished. The owners have signed their owner satisfaction certification, and the last one is being worked this week, and so we expect that to be done at the end of this week. We will be back for a public hearing. I think your meeting is June 16th, the third Monday. And at that meeting, we'll hold a closeout public hearing, or y'all will hold a closeout public hearing to close that grant. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and as I mentioned to you before, we had to put a rush on that one, and it worked out well.
It did. It worked out good, with a lot of help for an extension. Thanks.
All right, moving on. Mr. Crumpton, consider appointment of the legislative liaison.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The Association of County Commissioners has sent us a request to pick a legislative liaison from our board who will be the contact from the association to make commissioners aware of legislative developments and other items that are important to their lobbying efforts. So they're asking for an appointment of a commissioner. Commissioner Stevens was the last liaison that we had.
All right, floor for nominations. I nominate Mr. Kelly.
I nominate Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown's not gonna be here.
So they do such a good job of all those mailings that they send out to legislative alert, so we actually need a physical body to translate the things they send out on almost a daily basis sometimes.
It's during the legislative session, they like to have one person that they can contact on the board to rally the rest of the board members for a particular cause, to call our
Right.
senator and our representative to lobby them for issues.
Well, actually,
So,
it's,
I guess my request would be that we debate that as a board before we send one liaison up there to represent the interest, because we may have differing ideas on legislation, maybe that NCACC thinks we ought to have, but particularly for our county or district would not be a good idea. So I would request that, if we do have a liaison, that we be able to debate issues before that liaison speaks on our behalf as a board.
How about we
we're
nominate?
not, I don't think we're giving him an open forum to represent this whole board.
That's
I think
right.
he
That
needs to
person-
keep the board informed.
Right, that person is, can do a dual role. He can sit there and express your views as well as any member's views on this board to the NACO Legislative Board.
Well, I'm for balance.
Is this NACO or NCACC?
I'm at the NCACC, excuse me.
I'll nominate both of them. Commissioner Kelly and Commissioner Shipp. Send them both of them. That way we got a good chance of getting nothing done. Both of them.
Now, I think the request is just for one commissioner and, but there,
Well, two good prices, one is a good deal.
in reference to the mailings that we get, I get emails almost daily from them that,
I'm
Really
moving
see.
nominations be closed and take yours off of there and just put Jamie on there. By acclamation, it'll be all right.
Gee, I appreciate it so much.
all those in favor of Mr. Kelly by acclamation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered.
I'm going to vote for Commissioner Shipp. I nominated, so.
Well, she withdrew.
You withdraw?
Well, Mr. Pascal withdrew her.
I'm not going to go.
So, get Mr. Kelly's telephone number and email address to them ASAP.
Too kind.
Maybe I'll
worry.
get many emails.
That email will be sent.
Gotta put them on my
Quick.
spam folder.
All right, consider meeting dates for the month of August. We've already done June, July, and it has been practice since I have been on the board that we only have one meeting in July, August, and September. Is that correct?
So practice. So moved.
The 18th.
So we'll have
But me start having one anyway, we don't have enough money.
Anyone have any questions about that? July, August, and September, one meeting, unless something comes up that we have to call a special meeting.
Which day?
Be for all
And
3
it-
months, July, August, and September?
Yeah, we'll have one meeting a month.
Okay, I thought it was just one meeting
No,
for
no,
August.
no.
I'll vote for that too.
And it will be the third Monday of the month, is that correct?
I don't think you can do that.
No, you
Right,
can't.
August 18th. And any public hearings that we have those months, we can handle those by having it later in the month.
So we're meeting, how many times in July?
One more.
One time?
One.
And one time in August?
Right, and we'll meet one time in September, but we're not handling that today.
I'm you on finance committee.
Mr. Reeves has made a motion that we only have one meeting in the month of July, one in August and one in September. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. It's so ordered.
Third Monday is-
August 18th. Okay, consider,
Those all be 3 o'clock ones then?
yeah, consider resolutions for policy procedures for appointment to the county boards and commissions. Recognize our clerk, Ms. Lee. And I would ask you to pay close attention because we've got several appointments that are going to have to be made.
Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, at a recent clerks conference that I went to, the question came up as to how many counties have written policies on their board appointments. And it was really surprising to see that there were very few counties that did have written policies. And Lee County was one of those that did not have a written policy. So I got samples from some of the counties that did have policies, and I took the liberty of drafting a resolution for the board to consider. And you'll find that on pages 65 and 67 of your agenda package. This resolution states what we currently do. It's just that we don't have anything in writing that states it. The vacancies are advertised in the paper in April. Applications are received through the month of May, and they're presented to the board by the second meeting in June. I did incorporate a section at the end that addresses attendance requirements, because we do have a problem occasionally with people that are put on boards that do not attend meetings like they should. And it does prohibit those boards sometimes from holding meetings because they don't have a quorum, because the individuals do not let them know that they're not going to be in attendance. Mr. Hoyle has reviewed the resolution, feels like that it's in line with what we're currently doing. So I'm asking that you consider the resolution. If it is approved, I will post it on the internet and I will share it with all the boards and commissions. Anyone have any questions?
Motion been made by Mr. Quiggle to accept the recommendation of the clerk. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we appreciate your bringing this to our attention. This is one thing that I think is needed, and if it had been for you, we wouldn't know about it.
I would like to tell you that I've advertised the current vacancies we have. They were advertised in the Sanford Herald on April the 29th and May the 10th. The deadline for applications is May the 30th. I've received a few applications, but we still need some more. We have 38 vacancies to fill.
May 30th is the deadline.
The deadline for applications.
Are you gonna run the ad again?
I don't plan on it unless you tell me to. We still have up until the 30th, so some people may wait until the last minute to send their applications in. We can just wait and see. But it's whatever the board wants me to do.
The applications can be downloaded from the internet?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was stated in the advertisement, wasn't it?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, item D involves a voting delegate to the National NACO Convention, which will be held in Kansas City. At the present time, we do not have but one commissioner who has indicated that he is going, and that is Mr. Lamont. Therefore, I would recommend that Mr. Lamont be appointed as our voting delegate to the National Convention.
So moved.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. So ordered. Vote was unanimous. Going on now to item E, Mr. Reeves, concerning budget.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to remind folks that sales tax didn't pass, for those of you who didn't know that. And for that reason, this is an entirely different, it will make it an entirely different budget year than what we had originally thought might be the case. So having said that, there are a couple of things that I think we're going to need to consider, and hope that this board will find it in their wisdom to support the idea that we've got to do some drastic, make some drastic requests for folks other than the county staff to reconsider their request at this time, because the money that was once available, quite frankly, is no longer there, and we still got issues that we're going to have to face, and finding the funding for it is going to be a very tremendous task. One in particular is that if you look at the handout that you have in front of you,
Mr. Reeves, can you explain why the county, not the county, so the viewers understand why we're,
I know what you said.
explain why you say not the county? Because the county's already made the cuts.
The county's already made, I'll let the man go.
We've come in under last year's budget as far as county
To the tune of about
departments are.
$970,000.
That's right, almost $1 million.
I just wanted people seeing this to understand that we're not saying the county's exempt from these cuts. The county's already made these cuts.
Already made them. Thank you for doing that. This document in front of you is dealing with the school expenses and their budgets. And I'll let the county manager and maybe the finance director explain these two items, and I think Commissioner Shook will, as our representative, will have an additional comment.
Mr. Chairman, last week I had several requests from the public to get information from the schools, and the schools had the similar requests. So it was kind of interesting that in meeting with Dr. McCormick Thursday and talking to him about this, he got the same request. So obviously there's some folks looking at the school expenditures. The total increase in school current expense for the 08-09 year was $2.1 million, most of which, or I should say over half of which, went to the Sand Lee Middle School. So what we've done here in these spreadsheets, so that people can see where the school board takes the money that we allocate to them and where they put it in their budget. We looked at the last 6 budgets. We were not able to put it in the 08-09 budget because of the format that the schools submit their budget to us. It's not broken down by these purpose codes that you see here. So we probably need to make that request so we can tie in the 08-09 budget to see where we're headed. In my budget message, we talked about the increase in the per pupil spending that is coming from our current expense. It will now be over $1,500, $1,571 to be exact. So we've had quite an increase over the last 7 budgets to the school system. So tonight I expect, if there are any comments, that's where the comments are coming from. We talk about the cuts that the county made in their budget, knowing that we're not going to be able to raise property taxes this year, and knowing that we had the $1.2 million that we needed for the Sand Lee school opening. Our direction back to the staff was that to do the other things that we would need in our budget, we would have to cut our budget in other areas. We knew we had a COLA increase that we would need to get to the employees. We knew that we were going to have an increase in our medical expenses to the employees. So to keep those things intact, we asked them to cut their operational expenditures in their budget. So the number ended up being right around $950,000. So going forward, even with all the cuts that we made, I know there were a lot of people that felt or there was some particular entity, I shouldn't say a lot of people, one particular entity felt that we could address the issues over at the high school with existing funds. Obviously, they did not know about the large increase that we were going to have for the current expense at the schools, and we do not have current expense funds to address the high school with. And if you, I was going to discuss it later in my report, but if you see the CIP recommendation I made, there is no money for the high school or the community college in the next 3 years recommended CIP, because there is no money. So somehow we need to address some of the health and safety issues at these two schools with limited funds that we have on hand. We have a limited borrowing capacity. I think you've all heard the number $8 million is what our current borrowing capacity is, but you have to back out the $1.6 million that we're having the public hearing on tonight. Plus, we need to hold about $2 million in reserve for the Sandley Dam project that we're starting. So really, our net borrowing capacity at this time is about $4 million, which isn't going to go a long way at those two schools. But we may need to borrow that money to address some safety and health issues. Because if we can't do anything significant for 3 to 4 years, we're still going to have to address those safety and health issues that people came up to this mic and speaking in support of the quarter-cent sales tax told us about. Because now we know about the problems, and somehow we're going to have to work with the school board and address those issues.
Have they been identified, and do we have a list of those safety and health?
We just have what folks came up to the mic and said, and obviously there are pictures and stuff that are out there, but we don't have anything documented.
We're going to get documentation.
We're going to take some of the documentation that they provided already and do an outside assessment by an individual who has experience in.
Well, that was my question. We need someone who is appropriate for that estimate.
I think some type of assessment is going to have to be made outside of, the major renovation project that the schools wanted to do. I mean, it's.
Now, are we as a board going to do that, or are we just going to require the schools to do that?
I'm going to recommend that this board take the initiative and go ahead and recommend that it be done as soon as possible.
But it's not a problem.
Yes, sir. It's not as if we know we're going to have some windfall of unexpected funds coming in, and to take the position that we'll just wait and see what we can work out isn't in the best interest of those that we're trying to serve.
So you're making a recommendation and a motion that we do that?
I so move.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Does anyone have a clue what the cost is going to be for the study?
We won't know till after it's done, really.
No, I've had some conversation with some of the companies. You're probably to hire somebody in the $50,000 to $70,000 range to go do a full assessment of both facilities.
What are they? Are they other architecture firms?
They're either deal in construction management or in health and safety management assessment of facilities.
A combination of both with.
Yeah. And what we would really need to have in the motion is that we're going to request to the school board that they allow someone that this board hires to go onto their property at the high school and do an assessment for our board. I mean, you have to go through the right steps. It's their facility. They own the facility. They could tell us no, they don't want us to do it, but I think if we're going to have to pay for it, I think if we're going to pay for it, we would like to be in control of it, at least the study part. Now, we can't be in control of the actual construction. By statute, it has to be them. But we're going to ask them for permission.
We're going to have to provide the money.
That's correct. We ask permission from the school board and the community college board to allow our, whoever we hire to go onto that property and do an assessment.
And we're talking about Lee Senior and the Jonesboro campus
That's
for
correct.
CCCC.
Well, give you an idea how long it would take, John.
Well, both schools are getting ready to, recess for the summer, even though the community college will have some activity for the summer. It won't be at the level that it was. So, it's something that can probably be done in 60 days or so once the students leave the facility.
All right, Mr. Reed, did you include that statement that Mr. Crumpton made about requesting permission to do this from the schools?
Certainly will include that.
Right.
Commissioner Shook had some.
So what we're really needing is this line item breakdown per student for the 2008, 2009 school year, so we can, okay, I also would like, do we need to vote on that motion first?
Yeah, if you're
Make
gonna,
two separate ones.
we're talking about,
Okay.
you're talking about something else,
Yes,
right?
I am.
Okay, well, just hold up. Anyone have any discussion concerning the motion that's on the floor for us to hire the appropriate person and request permission from the school board to go onto their property and assess the need
As soon as possible.
and as soon as possible?
And this is the health and safety need.
Right.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion is approved 6-1. All right, now, Ms. Shook.
I would like to move that we have the chairman of our Board of Commissioners send a letter to the chairman of the Lee County Board of Education requesting the local expense budget that they, figures they have to be broken down line item, like the report we have here, so we can do a comparative analysis. And also, if they could furnish us for this school year, their financial statements, which include their income statement, balance sheet, fund balances, and so forth.
Well, we can request that. I don't know that
That's all we're doing.
then we can do it, then we'll get it. I recognize your motion.
Okay?
Any discussion?
Well, I think it's only fair to say that part of this is because we realize we are gonna have to make everybody's gonna have to make some adjustments. And we've been requested to meet with their finance committee, so it gives them an opportune time to look over this information and prepare it in whatever format they choose, but be prepared to discuss it at our meeting.
The meeting of the two finance committees.
That's correct.
Yes. All right, all those in favor of the motion to request this information and allow the chair to do it, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimous. All right. Moving on now, Ms. Shook, you brought an item on the consent agenda.
I did. It's on page 24 of your packets. It was budget amendment. I just didn't understand what this was for, but inspections. It said, per the county's contract with the city of Sanford for inspection services, we must cover 50% of any revenue shortfall. And I just don't like these expensive shortfall surprises at the end of a budget year. This is $57,463. So, Mr. Crumpton, can you fill me in on that?
Yes, ma'am. I think it shows that there's a deficit in the building inspections department, which we're contracted to jointly fund with the city of Sanford. And obviously, with the downturn in the economy and the reduction in number of building permits that they've been issuing, they have a deficit. I notified them back in January, based on the reports that they were sending me, that I felt that they were having, they were getting ready to have a revenue issue. I think they felt at that time that things might turn in, with the spring coming on, and they have not. So this is, I guess, the times of the economy, and but I do feel, they need to do something for next year to try to reduce the deficit in next year's budget. So, we're
Just a revenue shortfall.
this is a revenue shortfall, and I think you have to see how significant of a shortfall is. Remember, this 57,000 is actually half, plus the building inspections department made money last year, and our part of the profit was $34,000. They offered to pay us that $34,000, and I said, no, why don't you keep it in a fund for the building inspections department. If you fall short, you can use that money to cover the shortfall, and we'll just kind of balance it every year. So this 57,000 is net of the 34,000 profit that we shared with them last year. So there's quite a shortfall. There's almost $180,000 shortfall in their revenue.
You have reports that break down the building inspections as far as within city limits and then in the country, or in the county?
Yes, ma'am. I get those every month.
And is it about a 50-50, or are there more in the city than in the county?
Right now, there's more in the city than there is in the county, and that also is, if you take a look at the environmental health, which we've discussed, the last couple meetings, and how far off their permit revenue is. So they're inside the city limits is probably doing better than out in the county. And of course, if you look at the neighborhoods and where most of the commercial development is going on right now, it's going on in the city limits, based on where they've annexed or have had voluntary annexation.
Do we need to revisit this contract maybe? I don't want to see this escalating each year, to be a huge surprise at the end of our budget year.
I'll be happy to review it with the city manager.
What does the rest of the board feel? What are your thoughts?
I'm not opposed to revisiting it. I think we got to look at the terms of the agreement that we currently have in place. I guess one of the thoughts that came to mind was how much staff we're carrying to perform the task. Because if we're seeing that drop, then we may have to make some different arrangements. So
They have less work.
yeah. So it may be an opportune time for us to take a look at it during our next finance meeting. So maybe we can get the agreement out to us and see what the formula looks like. I can't remember offhand. Yeah. It was a staff breakdown, salaries, the whole thing, see what we got.
I don't think we have that, do we, Mr. Crumpler?
I don't have the staff breakdown right now, but I can get that. And I will say, across the state, there are a lot of building inspections departments that have had to temporarily lay off people. I see it on the listserv almost weekly, which is bad because it's hard to find qualified building inspectors. And I understand the resistance to lay them off because it's, things pick back up. It's going to be hard to hire those people back. So it's one of those questions we have to be able to answer. But you could see it in the trend in their revenue. You could see it coming. And
I'm not advocating laying anybody off. I'm just saying, let's look at the formula that we are using and see how the funding is being expended. I don't know what it is right now. We need to look at it.
Do we want to table this item until we get that information?
I think it just needs to go to finance.
Don't we need to approve this though, because we're still in the contract, we can't get out of that.
This is a new contract for a new contract year.
no, sir, this is for our current fiscal year, is to balance the budget for the current year.
I don't think we have much choice in this, to go ahead and move
Go
forward.
ahead and pay the 57,000.
Yeah.
Lisa, what is other funds in
The other funds in this case relates to fire districts. We had several adjustments to the fire districts for just collection fees that we were needing to adjust for. And that's it's all done within the fire district. In other words, we may budget $750 for the fire districts to pay the county for collection of motor vehicle taxes. If we do a better job of collections or more bills to collect, they may have come up, it looks like some of them will come over that, so we're just bumping their revenue up to cover their expenditure back to us. So,
How much
also.
money are we talking about right
And those, there was 75, probably less than $500, or right around $500. We did make an adjustment in the room occupancy tax, $540 adjustment for transposition error on the bill and amount. We also cleaned up several of the capital projects where there was money left from investment earnings, and anything like that, the money is being transferred over to capital reserve fund and used for future projects.
Okay, we've moved on to another item here. We need to have a motion to approve item J on the consent agenda.
So moved. It's on the same format.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. So ordered. Now, go on for discussion on the whole report.
Well, the one thing I would,
now? That was all in the same.
yeah, I was,
Other funds.
this just goes back to what I was saying earlier about taking a look, revisiting the budget. I mean, these are serious times. It's very easy for people to say, no, don't do something, and not give you any alternative that will work. And so now we've got our work cut out for us. Going back to, we're gonna have to look at almost every contract we have out there. So you may want to consider that when you, at our next finance meeting. The formulas are very important, and the number of people on staff.
Lisa, I have a question. This came up at, we've had, our fire advisory board's been needing to approve the budgets for all the volunteer fire districts, but question came up with Deep River that the airplanes out at the airport, we don't get the revenue from that per agreement with the airport authority, right?
The county does not, the fire districts do.
The fire districts do, okay, and do they get a listing of how much that is separate from everything else, or, no?
It's lumped together with their personal property. Do they want us to break it out for them?
It was just a, matter of how much is it, how much does that add to it, so. If it's not much trouble, I think it would be helpful.
Can we break out the airplanes?
We can, because we have to break it out for that separate
Yeah.
district, for the revenue going
So we
someplace
can-
else.
We can break that out.
Okay.
Where do you have the airport authority broken out?
I can get it.
Well, Deep River would be the only one to get that one, and that's in
That's
their
it.
district.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll get it to them.
Thanks.
Why do they want that?
That's how they fund their,
I mean, is it
their departments.
Is it
And
just
Deep
Deep River?
River is, got some things they've got to upgrade, so they just want to
just getting the funds there
open a can of worms.
for the other fire district?
The other fire districts
think-
don't.
No, I don't.
They have some firefighting requirements that they've contracted with the airport authority over. And I think the airport authority's given them a foam trailer and some other things. So, I don't, they might just have a concern about what type of airplanes are out there and what would be the response. So I don't,
That base is down this year. There were some planes moved out or sold this past year, so that portion of their base is down.
it's
The
down.
airport authority's base came down this year.
Yeah.
We're building new hangars.
We're building new hangars. They have a waiting list for the hangars, but some of the other planes that
That's-
have been there, they've traded them out for smaller planes, and they have to be here January 1st
Yeah.
to be taxed. So they may be renting a hangar here, fly out December 31st, and fly back in on January 2nd, and therefore they're not taxed here. Okay. So we do not pick them up in the base. As far
They
as
fly to the Bahamas for New
Keep
Year's
it ready
Day.
that those will fly out of here on December 31st.
I don't personally.
He knows it's going on. There's nothing he can do about
Start
it.
keeping a record.
You've got somebody sitting right next to you there, Mr. Reeves.
I got
that's
somebody
also on
sitting
the
out
board.
there. I got somebody sitting out there sitting on the board.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
As,
Price of that aviation fuel is putting a lot of people on the ground.
as far as the monthly financial report
Yes,
you
yes, yes.
have for April 2008, you will see that as far as revenues go, we are doing fairly well, or where we would expect to be on the ad valorem taxes. As I keep saying, local option sales tax runs 3 months behind, so don't be alarmed by those numbers. Other unrestricted intergovernmental is looking way over budget. That's because of the hold harmless for Medicaid relief. We did receive a second installment in April, which brought us more in line with the numbers we had originally expected. Don't know what happened. The state finally, I guess, wised up to the numbers. We will be doing a budget amendment to move some of that at either the first or second meeting in June, because we do have to hold the schools harmless for their loss to state public school fund money. So we'll be trying to figure those numbers out. We were trying to hold off till the next scheduled distribution of those funds so I could figure out the number and get as close to as accurate as possible on that before doing that budget amendment. You have a few departments that are running high on the expenditure level. You did just approve the budget amendment to correct the juvenile detention number. That number is simply running over because we've had some long-term people in detention centers, and they will be staying in there. We have several youth who are on charges of murder, etc., that are in those detention centers. So it is costing us more this year. We are continuing to monitor the jail budget in response to the food costs and the health care costs, and we'll be bringing a budget amendment to you before the end of June to cover those leverages there.
You see that piece where some sheriff in Alabama's feeding his jail for $1.75 a day per person? A day.
Question is,
We're doing a little bit more than that per meal.
question is, what are they eating?
Yes.
Does it matter?
It matters if you're in jail.
In this state, it matters because
There was the premise of it was an old state law in Alabama that anything that they did not spend, the sheriff could keep. And he was actually feeding them for less than $1.75 a day. Because he was pocketing some money, and it's perfectly legal down in Alabama. I just thought it was an interesting story.
John, are you saying that our state has statutes on the quality of food that prisoners get?
we have statutes on the quality of care, and then it takes is a good lawyer and have them go get a consent decree and all that fun stuff. This county has been down the road with consent decrees in the past.
Right.
That's what caused the building of the new jail. So then you're required to have a nutritionist and and all this other fun stuff. So
We want healthy criminals.
Well,
We want malnutrition.
healthy, well fed.
The state, they have a menu that they have to adhere to, isn't that right?
Yes, and the nutritionist has to certify that those particular nutritional values are being met. So when they come around and do their quarterly jail inspection, that's one of the things the jail inspector looks for, is what the inmates have been fed.
And it's a very serious matter. We've been down this road before. We've even talked to them about some of the menus are better than the schools.
They get ice cream every day too.
It sounds like a joke, but it's not.
The more I learn about the way our state tax dollars are wasted, the more I get frustrated.
All right, any questions of Ms. Minner on her report? That's item A under the manager's report. Moved on. Another line item. If there are none, do we hear a motion that we approve this report?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. So ordered unanimously. All right, moving on now to item B, mental health quarterly report.
You have in front of you the quarterly report ending March 31st, 2008 that was supplied by the Sam Hill Center. We are just simply passing that information along to you as required by state law.
Anyone have any questions concerning this report from the mental health authority? If there are none, do I hear a motion that it be approved? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say no. Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Now, item C.
I believe that's me, Mr. Chairman. When I originally submitted the capital improvement plan back in February, it included consideration of the quarter-cent sales tax in my recommended projects to be funded. After it was agreed at that time that we would revisit that after the quarter-cent sales tax referendum was held. This information I provided to you simply takes into account the effect of the referendum and, puts us, hopefully towards trying to approve this year's CIP, which obviously there's not a lot funded in the next 3 years. So I think the appropriate place would be for that to go to the Finance Committee along with discuss the budget. Be happy to answer any questions on.
Approve the CIP at the same time we approve the budget.
We normally don't do that, but that's about the time. That's the timing we're going to do this year.
Pushed up, huh?
Yes, sir. So we'll go to the Finance Committee. Item 2 was the 2005 CDBG project update. We've already discussed that. Item 3 was to let everybody know the legislative day in Raleigh is June 10th. I have it on my calendar to go up there for the day. It's always a good, entertaining day to go up there and meet with our legislative delegates. They're happy to see us, and it's always a good day to visit other county commissioners and other county managers to find out what's going on in their areas. I encourage everybody to attend, and if you're going to attend, please let Miss Lee know, and she'll put you on the list.
I think the clerk had already sent in the list, so.
All right, item 4 is the federal collective bargaining legislative update. Back when we were in Washington, D.C., back in the first week of March, we thought this issue was dead and gone. They were able to get enough votes in the Senate to reverse the cloture vote, and now it's come back up again. Our senators who voted against it will vote against it when it's actually voted on the floor again, and it will go to the president's office. I make you aware of this because this would have a drastic change, if passed, on the way we handle employer-employee cooperation in this state. How it would affect us is it would take the sheriff's right to hire and fire at will away from him, and require his public safety people to be covered under this collective bargaining rights. And also any firefighters that were full-time, which some of our districts have, emergency management personnel, and EMS personnel. We're not as affected as the city would be in this regards, but it would have a long-lasting effect in our right-to-work state.
Is this just an issue in the Senate, not in the House?
Well, the House voted on it last year. It was one of those things that kind of just flew through the House. It was an election year deal to pacify to show that the House was in favor of unions and that kind of stuff. So now the Senate had held it up, and what was holding it up, got defeated. So now it's going to probably be voted on this week and go to the president. We don't think there's enough votes to overturn the veto, but it's close. So, the association was encouraging us to contact our representatives and senators and let them know our opposition to this. I think it would have a long, broad effect on employee relationships with cities and counties in the state. that would go beyond this. I think other groups would try to also have this enacted, to cover them. And one of the things that we really, comparative to other states, have low manageable pay for a lot of employees, especially law enforcement and teachers and that kind of thing. So typically,
Our teachers in North Carolina among the top 10 when you compare apples to apples. I
Well-
just saw a report last week.
if they had the right to unionize, they might be even higher than top 10. They might be number one. So, I think in this state, we've been able to handle negotiations with our employees fairly well one-on-one and I don't think the employees needed to be unionized. So, something we need to watch, and if it passes the Senate, I think we're going to need to send letters, resolutions to our folks so that a veto is not overridden. I do have one other item that's not on my list.
Before you move on,
Yes, sir.
does that have a no strike clause in it?
Yes, sir, it does.
They can't go on strike.
That's correct.
Okay, I think that's very important. Okay.
The second item I have or the last item I have is from Nancy Kimball, letting everybody know that we will have a second primary on June 24th. It will be to elect Commissioner of Labor, the Democratic nomination for the Commissioner of Labor. There's a runoff. So you will be getting a budget amendment from the Board of Elections to run this election. This election has to mirror what we just ran. So they'll have the 4 one-stop voting precincts, and then they'll also have all precincts open. That's the law. I've already asked the question. I got the response. They sent me this frequently requested thing. Candidate John C. Brooks has requested a runoff with, I don't know what he's running off with. I don't have that.
Mary Dornan.
Mary Dornan.
Nobody got 40%.
How much is that gonna cost
So
us?
everybody has to vote.
Probably in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000. So
How much?
20 to 25,000. You have to have the minimum number of folks at each location, which is 3. So we'll have 3 people at each location, 3 for the one stop, and then 3 for all 9 voting places.
Same number of days.
I don't know how many days they're doing on the one stop, but I think,
June 5th to June 21st.
yeah, I think that's the 3-week period. I think they're required to have the 3-week period.
So we can't change that, we just can't have one day where maybe the 100 people who might vote in this election countywide anyway could go to the polls on that one day and vote.
I sent an email to Nancy. She forwarded it to the state. That's right. And they sent me this frequently asked question thing back, and it clearly states that the second primary has to mirror the first primary. Everything you did. So. You don't have enough time.
Are you recommending or asking us to approve those additional funds today?
No, she has a budget amendment coming to us for the June 2nd meeting, but I'm just putting you on notice for it. So you can mark June 24th down when we have a little primary. Actually, Chair McKellar, you need to give the Board of Elections 60 days before you can have a special referendum.
Is anybody that will help pay for
That-
this?
No, sir. The Board of Elections has requested, that's right, they're paying for some of the ballot expense, and the Board of Elections did ask for some help on the one stop, but I don't think they're gonna get it.
Okay.
That's it for my report, sir.
Thank you, sir, and, I don't think we need to vote to approve if you just give us a lot of information, right?
It's just information.
All right,
One thing, listening to the report and everything, as far as the collective bargaining, I would suggest that we send a strong letter or a resolution opposing the collective bargaining to a congressional delegation.
well, we can do that, but it might be get there too late.
Fax it to 'em.
This week.
Actually, if we do it now, I think the timing might be right if it comes back to the president, vetoes it, and then we'll go back to both houses to try to override his veto. It might come at the right time. You might want to go ahead and send it.
Okay, you make that a motion?
Yes, sir.
All right. County manager, Mr. Hall, get together for resolution.
Do it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carried unanimously. We come now to, the commissioners' comments, and one of our commissioners needs to leave. So I've got something I want to do before he leaves. 4 of the commissioners were present last Monday night out at the McSwain Center, and our commissioners were recognized in a very special way. And we were presented with this plaque. Lee County 4-H officially recognizes Lee County Board of Commissioners as honorary 4-H members. So we got our pins, those of us who were there, and I might add that this is the 100th anniversary of 4-H. So I have my pen on, and I have a pen to give to each of you who missed that meeting. All right, Mr. Will, you got it. Yeah, I'll get you in any 4-H meeting you want to go to. They're all public. But this is going to be hung in an appropriate place, out with our pictures on this wall right here. Okay? And I'm proud to be a 4-H member. All right. Do you have any comments, Mr. Clifford, before you leave? Thank you. Mr. Pascal?
No, sir.
Ms. Shook?
Don't think so.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lamont?
No, sir.
Mr. Reeves? Mr. Hoyle? All right, now we'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So, man.
Right. Okay, we're gonna take a 10-minute recess and we'll meet in the small conference room.
See ya.
Huh?